did a painting entitled Chief Joseph Rides to Surrender in, I think it was in the spring of 1979. I did it for the National Academy of Western Art show. This is a story that I had been reading about for many years, and I was fascinated by it. The whole thing was such a tragedy and so totally unjust. And the people that made this escape over the mountains and into the buffalo country were remarkable people. The Nez Perce were just regular, astounding people. And they were led by a man named Chief Joseph. He was more, I think, the spiritual leader. He wasn't a battle leader, but he really looked after the people. Remarkable man. The painting that I decided to do was the one where he surrendered in the foothills of the Bear's Paw Mountains on the north side of the Bear's Paw, about 40 miles from Canada. And it was in September, I think September 21st or September 22nd. But they had stopped at this Snake Creek to make camp after having been harassed and chased by the cavalry all the way across the western plains. And some of them actually thought they'd already reached Canada. They believed that if they got to the Canadian border, they would be safe, and of course they wouldn't be harassed by the army anymore. So they decided to camp there for the night and rest, and unbeknownst to them, General Nelson Miles and his troops were closing in on them. And early in the morning, they surrounded the camp. They were up in the high bluffs overlooking their campsite, and they dug rifle pits and piled up stones and proceeded firing down on the people in the village. The Nez Perce were badly beaten at the onset, and they were digging holes in the banks of the river and trying to find shelter. It was very cold and miserable weather, and they had old people and children, of course the women to look after. And I decided that the spot that I wanted to portray, the precise moment, was when Chief Joseph rode on horseback. They had a hard time finding a horse for him because at that point most of their horse herd had been spooked and taken away. His helpers found a horse for him. The general consensus seemed to be that he had 5 helpers. Some said 4, some said more, but I settled on 5. And he rode his horse past a specific point which was described in all of these accounts. And so after spending the afternoon walking across this battlefield and all through the fields, I picked the spot that I thought was just about precisely where he had walked his horse. And he was riding towards General Miles and the troops to surrender his rifle. And so that was the scene that I wanted to depict. And then it was a question of finding enough photographs of Chief Joseph so that I could end up with a likeness of him, even though the position of the head was different than any that he had been photographed in. Well, the point of this whole story is to show the desperation that these men must have felt. They were beaten. They had to surrender. He had to turn over his rifle. Their tribe was to be split up, and it was really the end of their world. So I think that the painting was successful. It was well received at the show, and they had at that time 5 judges. It was a juried show, of course, and they had 5 judges, and my painting would have been in the oil category, of course. And it didn't receive any award, but after the show, 2 of the judges came up to me and they said that they wanted to give me the gold medal for the painting, but they felt that it was so sad that nobody would like the painting and nobody would want to hang it in their home. Well, of course, they missed the whole point. I think it's one of my signature paintings. And I'm very proud of it. I'm very glad that I did the painting. It was well worth the effort, that's for sure.